So I really don't want to make this video. I stand almost nothing to gain from it socially or monetarily. I'm only inviting myself for ridicule. I can imagine being accused of Dunning-Kruger, narcissism, and just outright, stupidity. It's nothing new for me. So I've about decided that, you know, I can't hide it. It doesn't matter. It's just coming out anyway. If I don't talk about this, it's going to eat me up inside. And I always wonder, so at least I can say that you know, I tried to share my perspective. Maybe it's important that we do that. I've always been a very curious, independent thinker, fearless almost. I don't know if that sounds narcissistic or not. I mean, there's other stuff I suck at. Like I can be emotional and I can be slow and I can blow things out of proportion. I'm trying to be unbiased towards myself, but I do appreciate my intellect, which isn't, it's not like I'm a genius, but I'm smart enough to recognize genius and have enough courage to follow my curiosity without my own personal bias. Sorry, I hit the mic. Without my own personal bias getting in the way. So, what am I talking about? I think we've been fooled in a grand sense. Okay, yeah, that sounds crazy. What are you talking about? Well, here's a quote from Mark Twain. It says, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. And it's true. Rational, even though it's simple, it's not accessible always because human beings, it's not true that just because you're really smart that you're gonna, do things more rationally than others. Sometimes, intellect and rationale don't always go hand in hand, or I should say wisdom and intellect do not always go hand in hand. The smarter a person is, I've noticed, it seems to me, the less they think because, their intelligence is a form of aptitude. And so they don't have to think. And when they are forced to think, they're not used to it and it pisses them off. And a lot of times it's the people of lower intelligence that do a lot of the thinking, and they can make a lot of headway that way, but I don't know if everybody's going to get this or not. It's not an intellectual barrier, it's an emotional barrier that we put in ourselves. And that's what I'm saying. It's like we believe what we believe because of our emotional state. It generally has nothing to do with rationale, logic, and reason. The smarter you are, the more prone you might be to brainwashing. So that quote from Twain is a good one. I'm scrolling through my notes here. We've been fooled. So what am I even talking about? What are we fooled by? And it's the nature of the universe. Nikola Tesla was a part of a huge debate 100 years ago that's not well understood these days. And it wasn't just Tesla, it was all the electrical engineers, inventors that, of anything electric. They were able to build their electric machines because in their experiments they had formed a theory that the nature of the universe is immaterial, that electricity itself is immaterial. And that goes against what Einstein proposed. Einstein was not an inventor, he was a mathematician, and he was a theorist. he never built anything. And that's to his discredit in a way, because, you know, am I wrong in thinking that if you're an inventor, you have to come up with theories, just as any mathematician does? Except if you're an inventor, they have to bear fruit, like tangible fruit. They can't just live in our imaginations. And so what we have is a history of correct observation and incorrect conclusion. Like if you go back and revisit the experiments that supposedly uphold the idea that, light is a particle or something like that, you can go back and look at those experiments. And I mean, if you don't have any, if you're not already brainwashed by what we've been told, you'll come to realize that the conclusion that we've been dictated to is not accurate. We don't need new experiments. We just need to go back and read. Look, here are all the books. Here's, on magnetism, Faraday's experimental researches on magnetism. I've owned these for years. There's Maxwell. This guy laid the foundation for the equations of magnetism. J.J. Thomson, he coined the term the electron. He discovered the phenomena known as the electron. And boy, here's Steinmetz, James Proteus Steinmetz. He perfected Tesla's induction motor. Oliver Heaviside, another one of the gods of field theory. And in recent years, here's Eric Dollard, and that's a sequel to what Heaviside wrote. And while I'm not an electrical engineer or a physicist, and I never took calculus or trig, it doesn't matter, because I know how to read and I know how to think, and I'm curious. And even though I don't understand all the calculations that are detailed in these books, they all have a preface. If you ever read a book, a lot of times they come with a preface, an intro. And they'll, in a math book or a science book, it's not math, they'll lay out an overview in the preface of what the book is about. And so I read them, the prefaces, and I've read all of these. The book itself is just the details, but the heart of the book is in the preface. It's where all the claims are, and they go into, a little bit of an explanation at a 20,000 foot view. And they all have one thing in common, and that they theorize that the universe, there's a medium to the universe. It's in every one of these prefaces. Even, even the Principia, this is, Newton's book. This laid the groundwork. This came 100 years or more than all the rest of these guys. And he even states, he's trying to figure out how planets orbit around each other. He's trying to figure out gravity. And he doesn't quite get it right, but he still postulates that the universe acts on a medium. Tesla, Faraday, Maxwell, Steinmetz, all of them. And that is in direct contradiction to what Einstein said, which is, it goes against the theory of relativity. The theory of relativity means that it's just the concept of materialism, that everything in the universe is, it's a universe composed of tangible things, particles. And That's not the case at all. They have it upside down and backwards. The particles are subsequent. They're putting the cart before the horse. Okay? They would never have been able to invent anything if they thought that the universe was composed of particles. You have to be able to think clearly in order to invent things. And so, how do we know this? I mean, it's in all the experiments, like, But before I defend these claims, let me make the claims. So that's a big general claim. Here's the first claim. Time isn't real. Time isn't real. Time is simply a measure of magnitude, and things that have magnitude are things that occur in space, hence the relationship between time and space. Time is a measurement no different than an inch or a kilometer. Inches and kilometers aren't real. They're not real tangibles, and neither is time. There will be no time machine. There's no such thing. That's never going to happen. And yes, I've seen the movie Interstellar, and I'm familiar with the clock and train experiment, from the 40s. We need to re-examine the evidence for all our suppositions there are false. So time has no properties. Okay, next one. Space isn't real. Space has no properties. Saying that space is real is like saying that a shadow is real when a shadow has no properties. You can't bend a shadow. Both space and shadows have attributes, but they do not have properties. So the idea that space-time is like a fabric and can be manipulated is completely absurd. Next one. Light does not travel. It does not have a speed. Light is... Let me just read this. There is no such thing as a wave-particle duality. A wave is not a thing, it's what a thing does. A wave is a verb, not a noun. And no light particle has ever been observed. No photon has ever been observed. Nor is it even logical to begin with. Light behaves just like any other wave phenomenon. It's simple. The double slit experiment should prove light behaves only as a wave. But for some reason, perhaps nefarious reason, convoluted conclusion gained momentum thanks to Einstein. More on him later. Next one. There is no such thing as a gravitational wave. It's pure speculation based on the absurdity of the space-time theory, general relativity, quantum physics, whatever you want to call this garbage. The phenomena of gravity exists, surely, but without a primer in natural order, you won't grasp it. Gravity is no different than magnetic attraction. It's just non-point source dielectric acceleration is what it is. More on that later. Gravity, there's no ways of gravity that's distinct from anything else. Nature's simple. Everything I'm talking about, the reason any of this is interesting is because it's actually really simple. And even with somebody with just, slightly above intelligent IQ, can recognize that. Next one. Electrons don't exist. The phenomena of an electron surely does exist, but it isn't a particle. The discoverer of the electron, J.J. Thomson, whose book I just showed you, initially said it was not a physical, tangible, it was not a particle. He later reversed this statement after being offered a Nobel Prize. A pattern begins to emerge. speculative pattern, and we don't need to devolve into speculation for this video. Let's just stick to the facts. Next one. A magnet does not emit virtual photons, just as, the sun doesn't emit light necessarily. A magnet does not emit virtual photons. The fuck is even a virtual photon? It doesn't exist. It's purely theoretical. Oh, but Max, the math points to it. Well, yeah, okay, but you can invent math to point to anything you want, real or imaginary. Math is, it's a human construct. You can use it to point to truth, or you can use it to point to non-truth. Whatever you want, math can be. So that's no, just because the math points to it, it's like, look, I got eyes and ears and a brain. Pretty sure there's no particles of light. That's crazy. And it's not a duality either. You can invent math to point to anything you want, real or imaginary. You tell me, hold two magnets together, play with them. Do you really think there's anything coming out of a magnet? I mean, what is a virtual photon anyway? Forget what anybody's ever told you about magnetism, especially if you were an engineer or physicist. To think that a magnet emits anything at all just seems stupid to me, and always has. I just never realized it. I thought it was stupid. I just kind of thought that I was not getting it. Maybe I was stupid, I thought. Very discouraging the way they teach science. How many people would go into STEM if it weren't for the ludicrous things they teach? I've studied magnets a bit. I learned about the discovery that at the center of any magnet is a line called the block wall. They call it the block wall, which is it's the origin of the magnetic field. That's where the magnetic field comes from in a magnet. Yet, if you are to take a Gauss meter, which is a meter that measures magnetic flux, you will observe correctly that there is no magnetic flux anywhere at the block wall. And yet, without which there is no magnetic field at all. So saying that a magnet emits photons, even if they are considered virtual, whatever that means, is like saying that an unloaded gun can shoot invisible bullets that can still do all the damage of a normal gun with normal bullets that aren't virtual, that are actual. An actual gun with actual bullets, only that the unloaded gun, the magnet, has an unlimited supply of virtual ammunition. It's completely nonsensical. A magnet is a qualitative object. It is the exact same material as it was before it became a magnet. The way a magnet works is a huge clue as to the mechanics of the universe. If you can understand a magnet and how it works, y'all, you can understand the universe from top to bottom. The universe is qualitative, not quantitative in its origin. And at some point, we'll have to get into incommensurability. And defining a magnet really takes a long time. And it takes work. It's simple. Again, you don't have to be Einstein or a mathematician to get it. You don't have to be Nikola Tesla to understand it. But it will take work. Look, when Tesla said that if you want to understand the universe, you got to think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. Well, frequency and vibration are the same thing. Vibration is the resultant action of vibration. And energy isn't well defined. You know, if you look up the definition of energy, it's going to say it's the ability to do work. But that's descriptive. That doesn't tell you what energy is. And it's really hard to define because it's immaterial. And so, yeah, with quantum physics, you know, and we've gotten so they keep saying that quantum is continually making advancements, but it's not. They've been caught in the lie by rational people, and whenever they were caught in a lie, they just have to. It's like whenever you're caught in a lie, you just have to lie even more to cover up for your lie if you're not willing to admit that you were lying in the first place. You just have to create more and more lies, and each one more involved and convoluted than the next. And that's where we are now. You know, they say the universe is composed of particles. But now that we have technology like the electron microscope, which is really a dielectric inductance imager, is a better name for it. But that aside, you know, people start to wonder what's inside a particle. What are particles made of? And then you have to start making stuff up because it's not there, like gluons and tachyons. And then what are gluons and tachyons made out of? Well, they have a charge or whatever. It's like, well, okay, well, what's the charge made of? And you know, if you ask enough questions, they'll just basically then tell you you're not smart enough to understand. And when I was younger, I would have taken that as the truth, but I don't believe that now because I think it's true that, you know, things can be a lot more simple than that. But, you know, we have to, in order to, it's like, you know, I like to build stuff. I used to be a carpenter for a little while and a bricklayer, and I've always just kind of wanted to build things. Never got too much chance, but for a while I worked as a carpenter or bricklayer. A good while. Over a decade altogether. And, you know, I know these guys, better builders than me that would do, I like renovations. And sometimes you'd walk onto a job, you go to look at a job, and, you know, you might be coming behind another contractor that didn't finish. Maybe he was fired or quit or whatever, disappeared. And you're looking at it and you're trying to figure out if the work that came before was good or not, why they gave up on it. And in most of those instances, you can't just pick up where they left off. You have to rip it all out and start all over from scratch. It's just too dumb. And I think that's where we are. You know, you could say, well, the math works. Yeah, but it's like taking a detour. It's like you're trying to get somewhere and you're taking the long way. You want to take the short way. But even the short way is going to be a bit of a challenge because you have to, it's just like that quote, what Twain said. It's easier to fool someone than convince them that they've been fooled. And I'm trying to convince people that they've been fooled. And I don't expect to win. I'm just trying to make myself feel better. And yeah, I guess I feel better. I just, you know, I can only do what I can do. And I'm sorry it has to be me talking about this. There's other people you can talk to. If you're really interested, let me know. I'm not going to put them on blast right now. But yeah. I mean, light, like photon, like, you can't have light coming out of the sun. It would run out of photons long time ago. Or, even better, I mean, there's evidence for it all over the place. Look at, this light here. It's a tiny little couple watts, few watts. It has, according to quantum physicists, it emits light at the same speed as the blistering sun. That's, which that indicates wave phenomena. It's no different than water. Like if you create a wave on the water, light's the same thing. And by the way, we don't see light, we see illumination. But imagine you drop a pebble into a body of water, and simultaneously you drop a boulder into the same body of water. They're gonna have the waves are gonna have different amplitudes. The boulder's gonna have more amplitude in its wave. Pebble's gonna have less. But they're gonna travel at the same speed, which isn't speed, it's a rate of perturbation, because waves don't travel, they oscillate. Perturbate. And light's no different. Light is exactly like the pebble and the boulder dropped in the water. Even though they have different weights, the pebble and the boulder, you drop them in the water, the waves travel at the same speed. I'm using travel and speed for ease of use. If light behaves the same way, that's evidence of a medium to the universe. Very good evidence. Or like a wave, a sound wave. If I go, if I'm real quiet, or I go, something much louder, they travel at the same speed. Or rate of perturbation. What determines the speed? The atmosphere, humidity, barometric pressure, contents of the of the atmosphere, the air. I mean, the proofs of ether are all around. I mean, again, a magnet. You think anything's coming out of a magnet? That's what they say. They say there's virtual photons coming out of a magnet. It's crazy. The evidence is right in front of us. So, all right. More on that later. Thanks y'all for paying attention if you've checked me out this far. And yeah, you might have something to say or ridicule me in the comments or whatever. I might indulge in them and offer a counter, but we'll see. I'd rather just put it out there and keep moving, because I don't have time to argue. Yeah, I mean, that would suck. So, all right, y'all have a great day. Peace out. One love.